Please tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I would love to interact with you legends. Now to the story. I swear I almost didn't swipe on him. His profile looked too clean, like it belonged in some ad for a dating app rather than a real person's life. But I did anyway because his smile looked real enough, and his bio was funny without trying too hard. He matched with me instantly, which should have been the first red flag. Guys never match that quick, unless they're sitting there swiping through literally everyone. At first, it was easy. The kind of easy that makes you drop your guard without even realizing it. He knew how to keep a conversation going, and it wasn't the usual what's your favorite food kind of small talk. He asked me about the weirdest movies I'd watched, told me random things about his dog, and somehow made every message feel like it was actually meant for me. That's rare. The weird part came later, when I was mindlessly swiping one night after work. I came across another guy, different name, different age, but the pictures made me freeze. They weren't exactly the same, but they were close enough. Same smile, same places in the background, same outfits. It was like someone had taken the original photos, changed the angle, or cropped them differently. It felt off. I almost unmatched him right then, but curiosity kept me hooked. I told myself maybe he had a twin, or maybe I was overthinking it. But the more I looked at his photos, the more something scratched at the back of my brain. Then it hit me. One of the pictures, the one where he's standing in front of a brick building with a coffee in his hand, was familiar. Not because of the building, but because I'd seen it before. At work, on my coworker's Instagram. I work in a small office, nothing fancy. We all follow each other on social media because it's just easier that way. And this photo, same pose, same outfit, same smile, was on my coworker Liam's profile. Liam, who sits across from me every single day. That's when everything started to feel wrong. I spent the rest of the night scrolling back and forth between Liam's Instagram and this guy's dating profile. It wasn't just one photo. It was all of them. Different crops, slight edits, some with filters, but every single picture was Liam. Same dog, same vacations, even the one where he was at his sister's wedding. The guy I'd been talking to wasn't real. He'd stolen everything from Liam. Instead of freaking out like a normal person, I decided to see how far he'd take it. Part of me wanted proof. Part of me wanted to believe I was wrong. So when he suggested we meet up, I said yes. We picked a bar downtown, one of those dim places with neon signs and sticky tables. I got there early and sat near the back, watching every guy who walked in. I kept expecting to see Liam, which was stupid because Liam was probably at home, gaming like he usually did. Finally, someone walked toward me, smiling like he already knew me. And yeah, it was him, but not. It was a stranger wearing Liam's skin. Not literally, but it felt like it. He had the same haircut, the same beard, even the same jacket Liam wears to work. But when he sat down, I could tell. The eyes weren't right. They were too intense, like he was trying too hard to convince me of something. The entire time, he acted like the person I'd been texting, casual and funny, but it didn't line up. It was rehearsed. He told me stories about his job that I knew weren't true because I worked with the real guy he stole them from. He even mentioned things like, "Oh yeah, I live near that big Tesco," which is exactly where Liam lives. It was surreal, sitting across from someone pretending to be someone I actually know. Every laugh, every smile felt like an impersonation, and it made me sick to my stomach because he was good at it. Too good. If I hadn't known Liam personally, I would have believed every word. The longer I sat there, the more I noticed tiny cracks in his act. He paused too long before answering certain questions, like he had to remember what he'd stolen. He slipped up once, said he worked in finance, then quickly corrected himself to tech support. I just nodded, pretending to go along with it, but inside I was panicking. At one point, he leaned closer, lowering his voice like he was telling me something personal. He said he didn't usually do this kind of thing, meeting strangers, but with me it felt different. His eyes locked onto mine, and for a second I thought he might actually believe his own lies. I couldn't take it anymore. I excused myself, went to the bathroom, and texted my friend to call me in 10 minutes with some fake emergency. By the time I came back, he was waiting with that same smile, like nothing was wrong. When my phone rang, I didn't even let it finish. I grabbed my bag, muttered something about having to go, and practically ran out of the bar. He didn't follow me, but I kept looking over my shoulder the whole way home. Later that night, I checked the app again. His profile was gone, completely wiped, and the other one I'd seen, the one with the slightly different pictures, also gone. The next morning at work, I saw Liam sitting at his desk, laughing at some dumb video, completely unaware that someone had stolen his entire online identity and used it to lure people in. I wanted to tell him, but how do you even start that conversation? So I didn't. I just sat there, pretending everything was normal, while my skin crawled every time I glanced at him. Because all I could think about was the guy from the bar, wearing his life like a mask, and how close I'd come to being trapped in that lie. And I still don't know what he wanted. A relationship. Money. Something worse. All I know is I saw my coworker's smile on a stranger's face, and it's something I'll never forget. I thought I was smooth for once. Usually, I'd match with girls on dating apps, and the conversations would die before I'd even got their number. But this one, she was different. Her pictures looked insane, like the type of girl that usually wouldn't even glance at me in real life. Perfect smile, crazy eyes in the good way, and she seemed down to earth in the chat. She wasn't just getting short replies. She actually asked about me. Made me feel like maybe for once I'd gotten lucky. We talked for about a week, nothing deep, just stupid memes and random stories about our days. It felt real enough that I wasn't suspicious. She mentioned she wasn't big on restaurants, said she preferred chill spots where she didn't have to dress up. I didn't think much of it, figured she was just being cool. So when she suggested we meet at this park by the train station around 9 at night, I actually thought it was kind of refreshing. Low pressure. The night came and I hiked myself up like an idiot. I even ironed my shirt, which I never do. The park wasn't far from me, so I walked over instead of driving, which is something I regret every time I think about it. Walking there in the dark gave me way too much time to get nervous. I kept checking my phone, looking at her profile, convincing myself that it wasn't too good to be true. When I got there, the park was mostly empty except for a couple of groups hanging around near the benches. I looked around for her, scanning for someone that matched the girl in the photos. Nothing. I texted her that I was there, and she said she was on her way from the corner. That should have been my sign to leave, but I waited standing under one of the lamps like an idiot refreshing the app. A few minutes later, I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy ones. Not the sound of heels or flats. Heavy, dragging steps, like work boots on the path. I turned around, and instead of the girl, I saw three guys coming toward me. Hoodies up, hands stuffed into their pockets. They weren't even trying to act casual about it. My stomach sank instantly. The tallest one asked if I was waiting for someone. The way he said it, slow and flat, made it obvious this wasn't a friendly check-in. I froze for a second, and that pause was enough for him to smirk. He already knew. I could feel it in the way he looked me up and down. Before I could even answer, another one stepped closer and blocked my view of the path. That's when I realized they had me boxed in, one behind, one in front, one at the side. My brain started racing. This wasn't random. This was set up. The girl didn't exist, or if she did, she wasn't the one texting me. They told me to empty my pockets. My whole body felt like static, but I did it. Phone, wallet, even my keys. They grabbed everything quick, like they'd done it before. The tallest guy kept glancing around, making sure no one else was coming down the path. The whole time I kept thinking about my ID sitting in my wallet with my address on it. What messed me up most was how normal their voices were. Not threatening, not yelling. Just plain calm, like this was routine. That somehow made it scarier. At one point, one of them told me to take off my watch. It wasn't even expensive, just something my dad gave me a while ago. I hesitated, and he stepped closer, pulling something out of his pocket. I didn't see a full weapon, but the glint of metal under the lamplight was enough. I slid it off and handed it over. The seconds dragged. Every movement felt slow, like my body didn't want to listen to my brain. I was sure one of them was going to snap and hit me, or worse, just for stalling. But they didn't. They took what they wanted, muttered something to each other, and then just walked off toward the road, leaving me standing there with empty pockets. I didn't move for a good minute. My legs felt like they wouldn't work. When I finally did, I walked fast, almost jogging all the way home. No phone, no wallet, just my house keys gone and my head spinning. When I got inside, I sat on my bed staring at the wall, replaying everything over and over. How stupid I was to think someone like her would match with me. How I ignored every red flag because I wanted it to be real. How close I probably came to getting seriously hurt. I borrowed my brother's phone to call the bank and cancel my cards, and then I filed a police report. He didn't sound surprised. The officer said it happens a lot more than people realize. Fake profiles, setups, group robberies. He even mentioned a name for it, like it was some kind of trend. The worst part, the next day her profile was gone. Completely erased, like she'd never existed. All the messages, all the pictures wiped out. And when I thought about it, I realized I never once saw her in a photo with anyone else. No friends tagged, no real background details, just carefully chosen selfies. Now every time I walk past that park, I can't stop scanning the corners, half expecting to see those same three guys waiting for someone else. Someone making the same mistake I did. It's not even about the money or the stuff they took. It's the fact that I thought I was going on a date, and instead I was bait. That's the part I can't shake. The first time my phone buzzed with that weird notification, I thought it was a glitch. It said an AirTag had been detected moving with me. I don't even own an AirTag. I didn't think much of it at first. Maybe one of my neighbors had one and the signal was overlapping. But it kept popping up. Not just once, but again later that same day when I went out for coffee. The timing of it all freaked me out because it happened right after I stopped talking to this guy from a dating app. We matched, chatted for maybe 3 days, but something about him gave me bad vibes. He was too pushy, asking to meet up the same night we matched, asking for my address, saying he could just swing by. I stopped replying. He kept sending messages for a while, and then suddenly went quiet. I thought I was in the clear, until the AirTag thing started. I didn't tell anyone right away because I didn't want to sound paranoid. I just brushed it off and kept doing my usual routine. But the second time I checked the notification properly, it showed a map of where I'd been that day, like it was tracking my movements. My stomach dropped. I was literally holding evidence in my hand that something or someone was following me. That night, I tore through my bag and jacket, emptying every pocket. Nothing. No AirTag. I checked my car too, crawling under the seats with a flashlight. Still nothing. I convinced myself maybe it was just my phone glitching. That made it easier to fall asleep, even though I knew deep down it wasn't just a random thing. The next morning, I went to work like normal. Halfway through the day, the notification appeared again. Another AirTag detected near me. Different serial number this time. I froze at my desk. That's when I realized it wasn't the same one being carried over. It was new ones. Someone was planting them. I couldn't focus at all. I left early and decided to go through everything again. I dumped my bag out, shook my jacket, opened up every pocket, and that's when I found it. Tucked inside the lining of the inner pocket was a tiny white disc. I felt sick holding it. I threw it on the floor like it was burning me, then just stared at it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Someone had to have slipped it in there. My brain went back through the last few days. The only new person I'd even interacted with was that guy from the app. It clicked in my head that maybe he wasn't just some pushy dude behind the screen. Maybe he'd actually been close to me without me realizing it. I put the AirTag in a Ziploc bag and shoved it in the freezer. I read somewhere online that stops it from transmitting. But even after that, I couldn't relax. Every sound outside my apartment felt like footsteps. Every car door made me jump. The next day, I used a different bag for work. I felt a little better, like maybe I'd cut off whoever was tracking me. But by lunch, my phone buzzed again. Another AirTag. Different number. I swear I almost cried right there at my desk. It didn't make sense. My new bag hadn't left my side all morning. I locked myself in the bathroom and started pulling everything out of my bag one by one, desperate. And there it was. Another disc. This time wedged in the side pocket of my makeup pouch. My head was spinning. It meant someone had been close enough to plant it on me again. I tried to think back. When could that have happened? On the train. In the coffee shop line. At work. I couldn't pin it down, and the fact I couldn't made me feel even more helpless. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed at my friend's place, but I didn't tell her the full story. I just said I didn't feel safe alone. I barely slept, just kept staring at my phone, waiting for another notification. Sure enough, in the morning, another one appeared. I wanted to throw up. I tore apart the tote bag I'd used that day, but found nothing, which only made it worse because it meant it could have been in my jacket or even slipped into my pocket without me noticing. The realization hit me then. Whoever it was, they weren't just guessing. They were watching me, close enough to keep planting these trackers every time I switched bags. It wasn't random, it was targeted. I finally went to the police. I brought the 2 air tags I had found and showed them the notifications. The officer took notes but didn't seem that shocked. He just said they'd investigate and I should stay alert. That didn't exactly make me feel safer. When I got back to my car that night, I couldn't bring myself to get in. I circled it with my flashlight, crouched down, and checked underneath. I found a 3rd air tag taped under the back bumper. I ripped it off and sat in the driver's seat shaking, staring at it in my palm. This wasn't just someone messing around. They wanted to know where I lived, where I worked, everywhere I went. I thought about the guy from the app again. How insistent he'd been about meeting up. How quickly he asked for my location. I couldn't prove it was him, but in my gut, I knew. I haven't used a dating app since. Now, every time my phone buzzes for anything, even just a text, I feel sick for a second, like it's going to be another AirTag alert. The scary part is, I don't even know if it's over.
Hey guys, really sorry to interrupt. If you're still listening, then you're enjoying the story so far. And if you are enjoying, then please hit that like button. That's all I ask of you. Thanks so much. Now back to the stories.
It started like one of those stories you laugh about with your friends, the kind where you match with someone too quickly and it feels like you skipped the line. She wasn't the most stunning person on the app, but she had that look that made her seem approachable. Her messages were blunt, fast, like she didn't care about small talk. That should have been a clue, but I rolled with it. We matched on a Thursday night, and by Friday evening she was already pushing to come over. I don't usually do that, but she made it sound casual, like no big deal. I cleaned my place a little, put away the laundry pile on the chair, and convinced myself it would just be a short, fun thing. When she showed up, she was louder than I expected. Not her voice exactly, but her presence. She carried this big tote bag that looked like it was stuffed with way more than anyone needed for a quick hangout. I didn't think about it too much in the moment. Things moved quick, quicker than I thought they would, and before I knew it, the night blurred by. I figured she'd call a cab, or I'd call her one, and that would be it. But when the sun started creeping in, she didn't move. She just stretched out on my couch like she owned it. I made coffee, sat across from her, and kind of waited for the awkward, all right, I should head out line. Instead, she looked me dead in the eyes and said she wasn't going anywhere. At first, I laughed, thinking she was joking. But she kept sipping her coffee, scrolling on her phone, like she was settling in for the day. I tried being polite. Asked her if she had stuff to do, work, errands, whatever. She shook her head and said she was good. Just like that. Calm, like it wasn't even a question. By afternoon, it was obvious she wasn't kidding. She'd unpacked things from that giant tote bag, makeup, a hoodie, even a toothbrush. She placed them neatly in my bathroom like she'd already decided her spot. My stomach twisted, but I didn't know what to say without making it worse. I thought maybe if I left, she'd get the hint. I told her I had to run errands, expecting she'd gather her stuff and leave while I was out. But when I came back a few hours later, she was still there, sitting cross-legged on my floor, eating noodles she'd ordered to my address, like she lived there. That's when it clicked. She really believed she had moved in. She said it out loud, too, that this was her place now. I laughed it off again, trying not to let the panic show, but inside my brain was spiraling. This wasn't a quirky misunderstanding. She was serious. The next few days were a blur of tension. Every morning, she was still there. She'd make little comments about our kitchen or our bed. She'd leave her shoes by the door and hum to herself like she'd been living here forever. I started sleeping poorly, half waking up to the sound of her moving around, opening my drawers, rearranging things. One night, I found her in my closet, just standing there, looking at my clothes. When I asked what she was doing, she said she was figuring out how much space she could take. I tried hinting at her leaving, telling her I had plans, telling her I needed time to myself. None of it worked. She'd just smile and say she understood, then stay put. It got worse when she started locking the door from the inside while I was out. I came back one evening and my own key wouldn't turn. I had to knock, and she opened it like it was her apartment and I was the guest. The smug look on her face made my skin crawl. By then, my place didn't feel like mine anymore. She left clothes in the laundry basket, skincare on the counter, even changed the wallpaper on my phone when I wasn't looking. I couldn't breathe without feeling like she was watching me. One night, I hit my breaking point. I came home late and found candles lit in the living room, her sitting on the couch in my hoodie like she was waiting for me. My fridge was stocked with food I hadn't bought. She'd gone grocery shopping with my money because my card was sitting on the counter. That's when I snapped. I didn't yell, but I told her straight up that she needed to leave. That this was my place, not hers. She stared at me for a long time, like she was deciding something, then quietly walked into the bedroom and slammed the door. I spent that whole night on the couch, wide awake, waiting for her to do something. I half expected to wake up with her standing over me. The next morning she was gone. Just like that. No note, no goodbye, nothing. Her bag was missing, her clothes too. The only thing she left behind was the toothbrush in my bathroom, sitting in the cup next to mine. I threw it out immediately, but the sight of it burned into my brain. For days, I kept expecting her to come back, knock on the door, let herself in. I still triple-checked my locks before bed. It wasn't just a weird hookup. It felt like someone had forced their way into my life and claimed it without asking. And the scariest part was how normal she acted about it, like it wasn't even wrong. I haven't let anyone from an app come to my place since. It's funny how small things don't seem like a big deal at first, and then later your brain keeps replaying them like sirens you ignored. That's exactly what happened to me with him. We matched on a Sunday night when I was bored, scrolling in bed. He wasn't drop-dead gorgeous, but he looked normal. That's all I really cared about at that point. Someone who seemed normal. His bio was simple, he replied quick, and he actually suggested meeting up after just a couple of days of chatting. I was hesitant, but he seemed polite enough, so I'd agreed. He invited me over to his apartment to watch a movie. The classic cliche. I told myself I'd go for an hour or two and leave if it felt weird. He lived in a quiet part of town, not too far from me, in this small brick complex that looked older than I expected. When he opened the door, he had that easygoing smile that made me feel like maybe I hadn't made a mistake. Inside, the place was tidy but kind of plain. Beige carpet, second-hand couch, nothing hanging on the walls. It didn't scream serial killer, so I relaxed. He offered me a drink, we sat down, and everything was casual. The first 30 minutes were honestly fine. Then he mentioned it. Almost offhand, like it wasn't even important. He said his roommate was asleep in the other room, so we should keep the volume down. He said it while scrolling for movies, not even looking at me. I remember nodding, thinking nothing of it. Lots of people have roommates. Rent's expensive. It barely registered. But the more time I spent there, the stranger it felt. The apartment was silent. No shuffling, no movement, no sounds from behind the closed doors. Usually, even if someone's sleeping, you'd hear something. Pipes running, floor creaking, anything. But it was dead quiet. I started noticing other things too. There was only one set of shoes by the door. One toothbrush in the bathroom. The fridge had food, but it was all the kind of stuff one person buys. Single meals. One carton of milk, one box of cereal. Nothing doubled. I tried to brush it off, telling myself maybe his roommate was just neat. Maybe they kept their stuff in their own room. But once I started noticing, I couldn't stop. We were halfway through some random Netflix show when I asked him casually what his roommate did for work. He hesitated for a second before saying night shifts. But that didn't line up, because apparently the roommate was asleep right then at 8:30 in the evening. The air in the room felt heavier after that. I started thinking about the layout of the apartment. There were two doors besides the bathroom. One had a light on underneath, the other didn't. He never mentioned which one was the roommate's. I excused myself to the bathroom just to get a minute alone. While I was in there, I kept staring at the mirror, debating if I was overthinking everything. But something in my gut told me I needed to leave soon. When I came out, I noticed the door with the light under it was slightly cracked open now. Just a sliver. I hadn't seen it like that before. I froze for a second, waiting for some sound, but there was nothing. He was in the kitchen pouring another drink, acting like everything was normal. I couldn't stop staring at that door. Something about it made my skin crawl. If someone really was in there, why hadn't I heard them once the whole night? Why was the door closed earlier and cracked now? He came back with the drinks, noticed where I was looking, and quickly pulled the door shut with his foot. Didn't say a word about it. Just shut it like it was no big deal. My heart was hammering, but I forced myself to act casual. We watched a little more of the show, but I was barely paying attention. I kept thinking about that door, about how weirdly empty the apartment felt for a place that supposedly had two people living in it. Every time he got up, my eyes darted to see if he'd go near that room again. He never did. Around 10, I made up an excuse about having an early morning and said I should head out. He didn't argue, just walked me to the door, gave me a smile, and told me to text him when I got home. The second I got outside, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't run, but I walked fast, glancing back at the windows of his unit. All dark, no movement. Later that week, curiosity got the better of me. I mentioned his name to someone I know who lives near that complex. She recognized it right away. She told me he lives alone. Always has. No roommate. When she said it, everything in my head clicked into place. The empty fridge, the single toothbrush, the way he shut that door so fast when he caught me staring. I never messaged him again. I unmatched, blocked, erased the entire conversation. But every now and then, I'd picture that cracked door with the light underneath. And I wonder what or who was supposed to be on the other side. I matched with her on a Tuesday night, sitting in my apartment half distractedly swiping through profiles while an old episode of True Detective played in the background. I wasn't expecting anything. Mostly I just swiped out of boredom, and she appeared. Her name was Ava, and she looked like someone who had wandered out of a dream I'd had once. Not just attractive, though she was stunning, but approachable, her photos candid rather than curated. A smile that reached her eyes. A dog in one picture. A stack of my favorite books in the background of another. And her bio, Jesus. It read like a checklist of everything I thought I'd never find in one person. Same favorite books, same bookstore bands, same niche podcasts, same job field. Usually, if I'm lucky, I'll find one or two overlapping interests with someone. With Abba, it was every single thing. We matched immediately. She messaged first. It's weird how much we have in common. The conversation felt effortless, like we'd known each other for years. She could quote lines from movies I thought only I remembered. She dropped references to podcasts I'd followed since the early days when they had maybe a few hundred listeners. She even made jokes about the kind of coffee I liked, something I only ever mentioned once on my almost abandoned Twitter account. I was impressed, flattered. It felt like fate, like some glitch in the algorithm had finally worked in my favor. We set a date for that weekend. A coffee shop downtown I liked. When she walked in, she was even better looking in person. Same smile. Same easy confidence. She hugged me like we'd been friends forever. We sat down, and she immediately launched into a discussion about the book I'd been reading that week. Not just the book. The exact page the best quote was on. I laughed it off, called it spooky coincidence, but in the back of my mind, it sat there like a pebble in my shoe. The weeks went on. We kept hanging out. The pattern continued. I'd bring up an obscure band, and she'd say she saw them live years ago. I'd mention a new hobby I was into, and she'd say she'd been doing it for months. It wasn't just overlap anymore. It was a mirror. At first, it was intoxicating. Like finally, someone got me. But then small cracks started to show. One night over dinner, she said her favorite part of a novel was a scene that didn't exist. Another time, she claimed to know a video game I loved, but when I asked her something basic about it, she stumbled and changed the subject. Little slips like an actor losing their place in the script. That's when I started paying attention. I scrolled my old Twitter account one night, the one I barely use anymore. That book quote from our first date. I'd posted it months before. The exact quote. Then my old Instagram posts, hiking spots, favorite foods, the niche band I told her about. All there, publicly. The more I dug, the more my stomach turned. She hadn't just happened to like the same things. She'd studied me. I tried to rationalize it. People Google each other before dates. Maybe she just looked me up. But this was deeper than that. This was someone piecing me together from years of digital breadcrumbs, building a personality around me like clay. One night, she came over to my apartment and casually mentioned the color I'd painted my old bedroom at my parents' house. I never told her that. The only place that color ever appeared was in a Facebook post from 2015. Another time, she pulled up a recipe on her phone and said we should cook it together. It was from a food blog I'd run in college under a random username, a blog I hadn't touched in years and had never connected to my real name. There was no way she just stumbled on it. She'd been digging through my online life like an archaeologist. That was the night I knew. She hadn't been mirroring me after we matched. She'd been building herself to match me for months, maybe longer. She constructed the perfect partner out of everything I'd ever posted. I didn't call her out. I didn't know how. Every time I looked at her, my throat closed up. Every laugh, every smile felt fake, rehearsed. She wasn't into me. She was performing me back at myself. The final straw came one night at 3 a.m. My phone buzzed on my nightstand. A new Instagram follower request on my private account. The username was hers, but with an underscore at the end. I clicked it. The account was filled with screenshots of my old posts, saved and organized, hiking photos, band tickets, even the color of that bedroom. Some had captions, notes like she'd been studying for an exam. Seconds later, the request vanished. Deleted like she hit the wrong button. But I'd seen enough. I blocked her on everything that night. Unmatched, deleted her number, scrubbed my accounts. I thought that would be the end of it. A week later, I saw her, or at least I think I did, in the grocery store. She was standing behind a shelf of cereal boxes, peeking at me. Her hair was darker, shorter. When I turned, she ducked away. Now my accounts are locked down. I barely post. But I can't shake the feeling she's still out there watching. Every random like on an old post, every new follower with no profile picture makes my chest tighten. Because now I know she didn't just stumble into being my perfect match. She built herself into it, piece by piece, until I couldn't tell where she ended and I began. And the scariest part, I don't know how long she'd been doing it. Or if she's already started doing it to someone else. I always thought I was careful with dating apps. I had rules. No going to someone's apartment on the first date. No giving out my address, and always sharing my location with a friend before meeting up. I read all the horror stories, the headlines about women who ignored the red flags and ended up regretting it. I thought I was smart, careful. But none of that prepared me for this. We matched on a Friday night. His name was Ethan, and at first glance, he seemed normal. His pictures weren't the best, kind of blurry, mostly selfies, but there was this softness about him. A face you might pass on the street and forget a second later. Someone who looked harmless, like he wouldn't hurt a fly. His messages were polite, not pushy like so many others. He asked questions, seemed genuinely interested in my answers. He even used punctuation, which, in the world of dating apps, felt like a green flag. After a few days of chatting, he asked if I wanted to grab food. He suggested a diner downtown, a busy one, and I figured, why not? The date started out fine. He was on time. He held the door open for me. We got a booth near the window, and the place was buzzing with families, students, people on late-night coffee runs. It felt safe. We talked about normal things, school, work, favorite shows. He wasn't overly charming, but he was easy enough to talk to. He laughed at my dumb jokes. I started to relax. Then he pulled out his phone. The first time he said, "You look cute sipping your milkshake," and snapped a picture before I could respond. I laughed nervously, thinking maybe it was just him being a little quirky. But then he did it again while I was mid-sentence. Then again when I was looking down at the menu. By the fifth photo, my smile started to falter. Uh, do you usually take this many pictures? I asked. He didn't seem embarrassed, just smiled, calm and collected, and said, You're beautiful. I want to remember this, like it was the most normal thing in the world. He wasn't loud, not aggressive, not the kind of guy who made a scene, but he kept going. Every time I shifted, every time I looked away, there was the soft click of his phone. By the end of the night, he must have taken dozens. At one point, he even asked me to pose, tilted his head, told me to turn slightly so the lighting hit my face better. It felt less like a date and more like I was being catalogued. I brushed it off in the moment, too polite to say what I was really thinking. But when I got home, my stomach was in knots. It didn't feel flattering. It felt wrong, like he collected pieces of me to keep. After that, I pulled back. When he messaged, I gave short replies. When he asked to meet again, I told him I was busy. He stayed polite, but there was this edge of insistence. I'd love to take more photos of you. That was it. I blocked him. I figured it was over. Just another weird date story. 3 weeks later, a friend sent me a link late at night. Is this you? She wrote. I clicked it, half annoyed, half curious. It was a fetish site. One of those grimy corners of the internet I'd only heard about, where people upload stolen pictures of women, slap fake names on them, and spin entire fantasies. And there I was. Page after page of photos, the exact ones from that night at the diner, me sipping my milkshake, laughing mid-sentence, glancing down at the menu. Dozens of them. Some I didn't even remember him taking. But the name under the gallery wasn't mine. It was something else. A fake identity. Along with it, a whole fabricated backstory, where I lived, what I liked, what I did for fun. None of it true. I scrolled in horror. Strangers had left comments underneath. Disgusting, degrading comments, as if I were some character in a story they owned. Some asked for more photos. Others made requests, fantasies. They weren't talking about me like I was a person. They were talking about me like I was an object. I slammed my laptop shut, but it didn't matter. The damage was already done. Those photos were out there, saved by who knows how many people, copied and shared in dark corners I couldn't reach. The next morning, I tried reporting the gallery. The site's process was a nightmare. Automated emails, dead-end forms, vague "we'll look into it" replies. Days passed, and nothing changed. The picture stayed up. I felt powerless, like my face had been stolen and turned into a product I had no control over. For days, I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. At work, I kept zoning out, staring at my computer screen without seeing it. Every time my phone buzzed, my stomach dropped, convinced it was him, finding some new way to reach me. Every glance from a stranger on the street made me paranoid. Then it got worse. I checked the page again. I don't even know why, maybe some sick compulsion. And I noticed new photos. Different angles from that same night. Ones I didn't even know he'd taken. Me turning my head, looking away, laughing. He hadn't just snapped a few. He documented me from every angle like it was planned. I went back to the app to look at his profile, but it was gone. Deleted. Wiped clean. It was like he never existed. No trail. No way to confront him. Just his pictures of me floating online, attached to a name and story that weren't mine. Now, even months later, I can't relax when someone points a camera in my direction. I flinch when friends tag me in photos. Compliments about being photogenic make my chest tighten. Because I know how fast an image can stop belonging to you. How easily someone can take your smile, your laugh, your face, and twist it into something unrecognizable. It wasn't just a bad date anymore. It was a theft. A slow erasure of who I was, piece by piece, replaced with someone else's version of me. And the worst part, I'll never get those pictures back. They're his now. His and whoever else decided to collect me. When people say worst first date, I usually picture something awkward but harmless, like someone showing up late or being on their phone the whole time. What happened to me doesn't even feel real sometimes, but it is burned into my brain forever. I matched with this girl on a Thursday, and by Saturday she was pushing hard to meet up. She wasn't over the top, just persistent in that way where it feels like saying no would make me look like a jerk. She said we should grab dinner. That's all she said. Dinner. I'd assumed she meant a restaurant, something casual. I didn't even bother asking which place until she texted me her address and told me to pick her up. I figured we'd go from there. When I got to her place, she looked completely put together, dressed nice but not fancy, hair done, all smiles. I thought maybe I'd lucked out. She climbed in my car, gave me directions, and we started driving. Except the directions weren't taking us to a restaurant. They led into this quiet neighborhood, full of parked cars lining both sides of the street. She told me to park in front of this big two-story house with a bunch of lights on. I asked if this was the right spot, and she nodded like it was obvious. We walked up, and before I even had time to process, the door swung open. I was hit with the smell of food: turkey, mashed potatoes, stuffing, the whole holiday spread. And inside was a dining room packed with people, like 20 of them. They all looked up the second we walked in, and she didn't hesitate. She grabbed my arm, pulled me closer, and introduced me to the entire room as her boyfriend. Not date, not friend. Boyfriend. I froze. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. I didn't know what to say or do. They were clapping, smiling, telling me how nice it was to finally meet me. Her mom hugged me before I could even react. Her dad shook my hand so hard my knuckles cracked. Meanwhile, she was grinning like it was the most normal thing in the world. The whole table was already set like some kind of Thanksgiving dinner, even though it wasn't even close to November. Huge turkey in the middle, bowls of mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, pies cooling on the counter. Everyone was seated, waiting. And suddenly, I was being shoved into a chair at the head of the table like I belonged there. My brain was screaming, but I forced a smile and sat down. Plates were passed, food piled high, people asking me questions left and right. How did we meet? How long had we been dating? What were my intentions? I tried to keep my answers vague, but she kept jumping in, filling in the blanks with details I'd never said. She told them I loved hiking, that I wanted kids, that I was serious about her. Everyone nodded like they were approving of me, like this was some sort of evaluation. I wanted to get up and leave so badly, but I felt trapped. Walking out would have meant causing a scene in front of her entire family, and the way her dad kept watching me made me feel like that wasn't an option. The longer I sat there, the worse it got. They brought up future plans, holidays, vacations. Her aunt asked if I'd be joining them for Christmas. Her little cousin asked if I'd move in with her. Everyone laughed like it was a joke, but she just squeezed my hand under the table. That was when it really sank in. This wasn't an accident. She had planned this. I excused myself to the bathroom just to get a second to breathe. I locked the door and stared at myself in the mirror, my face pale, hands shaking. I thought about climbing out the window, but it was too small. I thought about calling someone, but my phone was in my jacket on the chair. When I came back, dessert was already being served. Pumpkin pie, ice cream, coffee. She patted the seat next to her and beamed like nothing was wrong. I sat down again, and that's when she leaned in close and whispered, just loud enough for me to hear, that her family had been waiting so long to meet me, that this was the start of something real. I swallowed hard and forced another fake smile. My chest felt tight. After dessert, people started leaving. Hugs, handshakes, promises to see each other soon. Her parents told me I was welcome any time. She walked me to my car, holding onto my arm the entire way. When we got there, she kissed my cheek and said she couldn't wait to see me again. I drove off, my hands gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. I didn't even look back. The second I got home, I blocked her number, unmatched her, erased every trace of her from my phone. I half expected her to show up at my door the next day with leftovers. She never did, but for weeks I felt like eyes were on me. Every time a car slowed near my place, every time I saw someone staring in a grocery store, I thought of that dinner, of her family smiling at me like I was already locked in. I still don't know if she told them the truth afterward or if they still think I'm her boyfriend. Either way, I'll never forget sitting at that table, surrounded by strangers, and realizing I wasn't on a date. I was being introduced as a future husband. The thing about allergies is you don't expect to be scared of them on a date. It's one of those facts you mention offhand, like, I'm left-handed or I can't parallel park. Most people nod, maybe make a peanut butter cup joke, and move on. That's what I thought would happen when I mentioned it to him. We matched after a week of me mindlessly scrolling the app. His name was Ryan, and at first, he seemed normal enough. Not overly smooth, not creepy, just kind of steady. His photos were unremarkable, a couple of outdoor shots, one at a friend's wedding, and his messages were polite. We traded the usual small talk, then memes, then longer messages about music and work. He asked me out to dinner after a few days. I told him about my allergy early, half joking that I'm the annoying one who always has to double check menus. I'm deathly allergic to peanuts, I wrote. Cross-contamination will ruin my night. He was super understanding. Said he already had a place in mind that was safe for me. That should have been reassuring. Instead, it became the detail that keeps me awake at night. The restaurant wasn't fancy. One of those mid-level places with wooden booths and dim overhead lights, trying to seem intimate, but mostly just making the menu hard to read. It smelled like grilled meat and garlic bread. I arrived first and took a seat near the back where it was quieter. When he showed up, he was exactly like his photos. Clean-cut, neutral. He smiled a lot, the kind of smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. We made small talk about work, TV shows, the weird weather. Nothing unusual. When the waiter came over, I did my usual routine. I have a severe peanut allergy, I said. No cross-contamination, please. I always make sure to be clear. The waiter nodded, wrote it down. I even repeated it twice, just to be sure. Ryan smiled at the waiter and said, I'll order for her. He repeated my allergy back like he was being extra careful and ordered grilled chicken with vegetables for me. For himself, he got some kind of pasta. I thought it was sweet at the time, like he'd gone out of his way to make the night easier for me. The food came out looking safe, plain even. Just grilled chicken and vegetables. Nothing suspicious. We clinked glasses. We laughed about something stupid. We started eating. The first few bites were fine. Then I felt it. That scratchy burn in the back of my throat. My lips tingled. My chest tightened. It's a feeling I know all too well. That creeping, unmistakable panic. At first, I thought I was overreacting. Sometimes allergies make you paranoid, but the symptoms ramped up fast, faster than I'd ever experienced. My throat swelled, my skin started itching, and I could feel panic clawing at me. I pushed the plate away, heart pounding. The waiter rushed over when they saw me struggling. My voice came out as a rasp. Peanuts. Help. But Ryan just sat there. His face didn't look shocked, didn't look confused, didn't look scared. He looked calm, steady, like he was watching something inevitable unfold. They called for an ambulance. My hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my EpiPen. I injected myself right there in the booth, gasping for air as the room tilted around me. The waiter was panicking, other diners were staring, and I was fighting to breathe. And Ryan just sat there, his hands folded on the table, watching. At the hospital, once the medication kicked in and my airway started to clear, the nurse confirmed it. A severe peanut reaction. You're lucky you had your EpiPen, she said. This could have been worse. I told them I'd warned the restaurant twice, that there was no way they should have let this happen. The staff even came to apologize, pale-faced, swearing they didn't understand how it had happened. Their kitchen was strict, they said. They'd never messed up an order like that before. But the more I replayed the night in my head, the less I believed it was an accident. I remembered Ryan insisting on ordering for me, smiling at the waiter, saying he knew what I'd want, repeating my allergy back like a promise. And that look on his face when I started choking, too calm, too steady, like he was waiting for it. I never saw him again. I blocked his number, unmatched him, erased every trace of him from my phone. I couldn't prove anything, but deep down I knew he hadn't just forgotten. He hadn't just been careless. He tested me. Now, every time I sit down in a restaurant, I can't relax. I scan the kitchen. I triple-check my plate. I stare at my food like it's a loaded weapon. I watch the waiter's hands, the chef's face, anyone who might have touched my meal. And I keep seeing Ryan's face across the table. That little smile. Those steady eyes. watching me while I struggled to breathe. It wasn't just about almost dying. It was about betrayal. About realizing someone you trusted with one simple truth about yourself could decide to use it against you. That thought never leaves. I used to think my allergy was just an inconvenience, something to work around. Now it feels like a target painted on my back. Because once you've seen someone turn your vulnerability into a weapon, you never eat the same way again. You never date the same way again. You never look at kindness the same way again. And you never forget the face of the person who sat across from you smiling while you fought for air. When people ask me about the weirdest date I've ever been on, I don't even know how to start, because it wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, smooth, almost too smooth, and that's why it messed me up. I matched with her on a Wednesday. Her profile was short, not much to go on, but her pictures were sharp, put together in that polished way that makes you think she's probably busy and successful. We chatted for a couple of days, and she was fast to reply, way more enthusiastic than most people. She told me right away she liked my vibe, that I seemed different from the usual guys. It was flattering. We met up for coffee on Sunday afternoon. She walked in smiling like we already knew each other. She leaned across the table, locked her eyes on mine, and from the start, it was all about me. She said how glad she was we matched, how rare it was to find someone like me, how she felt like she could talk to me for hours. It was a lot, but I figured maybe she was just one of those people who wears their heart on their sleeve. She asked me questions constantly, what I'd like to do, what my goals were, what I wanted out of life. Every answer I gave, she lit up, like I was checking off a box she'd been waiting for. She laughed too loud at my dumb jokes, leaned in every time I spoke, and kept touching my hand across the table like we were already together. Halfway through the date, I was flattered, but also starting to feel boxed in. It was too much too soon. But then the conversation shifted. She started asking about money. At first, it was subtle. She asked about my job, if I liked it, if it paid well. Then she asked about savings, if I was smart with my cash, if I wanted to grow it. I brushed it off, but she didn't let it go. She smiled and told me she had something I needed to see. She pulled out her phone and opened this sleek-looking app, filled with charts and numbers I didn't recognize. She said it was an investment platform, totally safe, high returns, barely any risk. She told me she'd made thousands in just a few weeks. She even showed me screenshots of her earnings, numbers that looked too perfect to be real. I laughed nervously and said I didn't know much about that stuff. She leaned closer, dropped her voice, and told me this was special, not something you could just Google. She said she really liked me, and because of that, she wanted to let me in. The way she said it made my skin crawl. It wasn't flirty anymore. It felt like she was pitching me something. She wouldn't stop. Every time I tried to change the subject back to normal date talk, she circled it back to the app. She told me I'd regret it if I didn't try. She said I could start small, just a few hundred, and watch it grow. She even offered to help me set it up right there at the table. I kept dodging, saying I wasn't comfortable sharing financial stuff, but she kept pushing. The way she smiled didn't reach her eyes anymore. It was like she flipped a switch, and suddenly I wasn't a date, I was a target. I excused myself to the bathroom just to get away from the pressure. Standing in front of the mirror, I realized my stomach was twisted in knots. This wasn't a coincidence. She reeled me in with compliments, with attention, and now she was going for the hook. When I went back to the table, she slid her phone across to me with the app open, ready for me to type in my info. I pushed it back and said I really had to go. Her smile cracked just a little, but she kept it plastered on. She told me she understood, that maybe I just wasn't ready, but she'd check in with me later. I left the cafe and walked fast to my car, my chest tight the whole way. That night, she sent me a long string of messages. At first, they were sweet, saying she had a great time, that she felt like we had something special. Then they turned into reminders about the app, screenshots of new profits, encouragement to not miss my chance. When I didn't reply, they turned sharper. She accused me of not trusting her, of letting fear ruin something amazing. I blocked her. A few days later, I checked the App Store out of curiosity. The app she showed me didn't exist. The screenshots she'd shown me were fakes, stitched together. It wasn't just a scam. It was a trap dressed up as a first date. I don't know how many people she's done it to, how many people actually gave her money, but the way she had it rehearsed, the way she had the compliments, the flirting, the setup, it felt like a script she'd run through 100 times. Now, whenever someone comes on too strong, I can't help but think about her smile across that table and the way it hardened when she realized I wasn't going to hand her my bank account. It wasn't dinner. It wasn't a date. It was a pitch. And I'll never forget how close I came to falling for it. The date itself was boring. That's the funny part. Nothing dramatic, no sparks, no disasters. Just two people sitting across from each other at a bar, making polite conversation about work, food, TV shows. He wasn't awful, but he wasn't great either. One of those dates where you know halfway through you're probably never going to see each other again. We finished our drinks, traded a few last jokes, and I thanked him for the evening. He walked me outside, and we stood there for a second in the yellow glow of the streetlight. He asked if I needed a ride, and I said no, I'd already called an Uber. He nodded, gave me a quick hug, one of those polite, light ones that don't really mean anything, and left in the opposite direction. That was it. End of story. Or at least I thought it was. I stood outside, refreshing the app, watching the little car icon crawl closer on the map. The night air was cool, damp, and the bar's neon sign flickered behind me. I scrolled through my phone, half distracted, half tired, glancing up the street now and then. A black sedan pulled up to the curb. Same color, same shape as the one on my screen. The back window rolled down, and the driver leaned over, smiling. He said my name. I didn't think twice. I got in. The door shut with a heavy click, sealing me inside. The driver's smile was easy, friendly. The first thing he said was, "Your date told me to make sure you got home safe." I blinked. "Oh, thanks." I laughed awkwardly, confused, but thought maybe my date had just been extra cautious. Maybe he'd seen me waiting outside and wanted to make sure I got home. It seemed sweet in a weird way. We started driving. The radio was off. The only sound was the hum of the engine and the occasional click of the turn signal. Pretty quickly, I noticed something strange. The app on my phone wasn't matching the route we were taking. The little blue line veered left, but we kept going straight. I leaned forward and asked, "Are you following the GPS?" He smiled at me in the rearview mirror. "Don't worry," he said. "I know a better way." My chest tightened. I glanced at my phone again, double-checking the license plate, and froze. It didn't match. My Uber was still 5 minutes away. I was in the wrong car. The air suddenly felt heavy, like a blanket pressing against my lungs. My throat went dry. I thought about asking him to stop, but the words stuck. I didn't want to tip him off that I knew. So I sat back, gripping my phone so tightly my knuckles ached, pretending like nothing was wrong. He kept talking, calm and casual, asking if I had fun on my date, saying the guy seemed nice. My stomach churned. He shouldn't have known anything about my date. They hadn't spoken. My date hadn't even seen me get into the car. The street started to look less familiar. Fewer lights, fewer cars, the noise of the city fading behind us. We were cutting deeper into a quieter neighborhood, the kind of place where gas stations and corner stores start disappearing. My hands were sweating. My heart pounded so loud it drowned out the hum of the engine. I kept thinking about jumping out, but we were moving too fast, the doors too close, the road too dark. I opened my phone and hit the emergency option on the Uber app, even though I wasn't in my Uber. I thought maybe the alert would still go somewhere. I slipped my hand into my pocket so he wouldn't see me tapping. He glanced back in the mirror again, his smile twitching at the edges. "You look nervous," he said softly. "No need to be. Your date told me to take care of you." He kept repeating that line like it was supposed to comfort me, but it made my skin crawl. I forced myself to laugh. "Actually," I said, my voice trembling, "I really need to use the bathroom. Could you drop me at a gas station?" He didn't answer right away, just kept driving, silent now, eyes fixed on the road. My heart was hammering against my ribs. Finally, after what felt like forever, he slowed and pulled into a small corner store lot. The lights overhead buzzed, casting a sickly yellow glow. One flickered like it was about to go out. He parked, looked back at me. "I'll wait," he said. I opened the door slowly, every muscle in my body tense, and stepped out. The air felt cooler out there, sharper. I forced myself to walk calmly toward the store, my legs like lead. The second I was inside, I bolted for the counter. "That car outside isn't mine," I blurted to the clerk, my voice shaking. "I think he's pretending to be my driver." The clerk's eyes widened. He looked out the window, then grabbed the phone and called the police without asking more questions. By the time they showed up, the car was gone. Just disappeared into the night. No plate number, no ID, nothing. My actual Uber driver called minutes later, asking if I was still coming. He said he'd been waiting at the bar the whole time, right where I left him. That's when it hit me. Whoever that man was, he hadn't just been randomly cruising. He'd been watching. He pulled up at the exact moment I was waiting, said my name, and played it off like he was supposed to be there. And I'd fallen for it. I still don't know what would have happened if I hadn't noticed the plate, if I hadn't thought fast enough to get out of the store. The police never found the car. They told me it happens more often than people realize. Fake rides, people pretending to be drivers. Now, every time I order an Uber, I triple check the plate, the face, the driver's name. I hold the door open, stare at the driver for a beat too long, and even then, I hesitate before getting in. Because all I can hear is his voice in the mirror, calm and steady, saying over and over that my date wanted him to make sure I got home safe. And I'll never know what he really meant by that. I wasn't even looking for anything serious when I matched with her. I was just swiping out of boredom, half watching a show in the background, half scrolling through strangers' faces. But from the first conversation, it felt like we clicked in a way that didn't feel forced. She wasn't dry or awkward. She wasn't over the top either. Just easy. She had this balance that made me feel like she actually got me. Her jokes landed. She didn't use the same tired openers. She remembered details from one message to the next. Even in text, she felt present, like she was actually there with me. We went out for coffee first. That's simple, no pressure. I picked a place downtown, crowded enough to feel safe, but quiet enough to talk. She walked in with this calm smile, like she already knew me, like we were just picking up a conversation we'd been having for years. She had dark hair tucked behind one ear, and this subtle scent, something clean like soap and rain. The whole time I kept thinking, why does this feel so normal? It wasn't fireworks. It wasn't dramatic. It was just comfortable in a way I'd never felt with someone I just met. We ended up meeting again that same week. Dinner, then a walk by the river. She laughed at my dumb stories, remembered every little detail I'd told her, even brought up something from the first conversation that I'd forgotten. Every time we met, it was like she'd been studying me, but in the best way possible, or so I thought. By the third date, I was hooked. She wasn't just pretty. She was smart, quick, and somehow always in sync with me. She'd finish my sentences sometimes, or bring up a book I had literally just started reading like she'd read my mind. I didn't question it. I just thought I'd finally gotten lucky. Then one night, she messaged me saying she couldn't wait to see me again. That was the last message I ever got from her. The next morning, her profile was gone. Not unmatched gone, like it never existed. At first, I thought maybe she deleted the app. People do that all the time. But when I went back to our messages, everything had vanished. Not even her name was there. Just blank. I texted her. No reply. I tried calling. Straight to voicemail. I checked her Instagram, gone. Not private, not blocked. Just wiped. Same with Facebook, Twitter, everything. It was like she'd never been online at all. At first, I told myself it was a glitch. Maybe she deactivated everything in one sweep. People get overwhelmed, delete social media, disappear for a bit. But as the hours went on, that didn't sit right. Nobody just erases themselves overnight. Not without a reason. I started replaying our dates in my head, trying to think if I missed something. Some sign that she wasn't who she said she was. But everything had felt so real. The way she laughed, the way she leaned in when she talked, the little stories she told about her job and her family. Were those even true? The more I thought about it, the more cracks started to show. She never added me on social media. She never let me take a picture of her. Every time I pulled out my phone, she'd joke about hating photos and cover her face. I didn't think much of it then, but now it made me sick. I even went back to the coffee shop where we first met, hoping maybe she'd show up again. The barista said she didn't remember seeing her, even though we'd sat there for 2 hours that day. I described her, the way she dressed, her laugh. Nothing, like she'd been invisible. I kept searching, Googling her name per workplace, even the restaurants we went to. No trace. Every lead ended in nothing. It felt like chasing a ghost. What messed with me the most were the memories of her little details. The way she knew things about me that I didn't remember telling her. Like when she mentioned the scar on my wrist from when I was a kid. I'd never told her how I got it, but she somehow knew. Or when she said she'd always wanted to visit the exact city my family is from. I never mentioned that city to anyone outside of close friends. That's when it hit me. Maybe she'd been the one looking me up, not just casually scrolling my profiles, really digging. She knew too much. The thought made my stomach turn, because if she could erase herself so easily, it meant she knew how to cover her tracks. And if she knew that much about me, it meant I had been studied, maybe even watched without realizing it. I stopped sleeping well. My phone would buzz late at night and I'd jolt awake, half expecting her name to pop up again. I started checking my apartment locks twice, then 3 times before bed. I covered my webcam. I found myself looking over my shoulder on the street, half expecting her to be there. For weeks, I kept expecting her to pop back up. Maybe send a message out of nowhere, maybe appear on another app under a new name. But she didn't. She just vanished. It's been months now, and I still don't know what she wanted. Was it just a project? Some experiment? Was she building a file on me, some digital collage of who I was, only to discard me once she'd gotten what she needed? Or worse, was she setting me up for something that never happened? Sometimes I wonder if she's still out there, still watching, still digging. Maybe she's doing it to someone else now. Maybe I was just a dry run, a test case for whatever she's planning. All I know is I met someone who felt more real than anyone else I've dated, and then she disappeared like she was never there at all. And that feeling, that whiplash between intimacy and nothingness, stays with me. I keep thinking about her last message. I can't wait to see you again. I read it over and over, and then she was gone. I'd been to people's apartments on first dates before, and it was always kind of awkward. You never know what you're walking into. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it smells like laundry that's been sitting too long. You make small talk. Try not to notice the weird pile of clothes in the corner and pretend you're comfortable. His place was different, though. It was spotless. Too spotless. The floors were clear, nothing on the counters, no random clutter. Everything was arranged like it was staged. At first, I thought maybe he was just really clean, one of those minimalist types who only owns 6 things. But the longer I sat there, the stranger it felt. It wasn't lived in. It was performed, like a rental property done up for a photo shoot. We'd met on the app 2 weeks earlier. He seemed normal enough, maybe a little plain, but easy to talk to. He messaged me every morning, asked me about my day, remembered little things I said. He was polite and never pushy. So when he asked if I wanted to come over for dinner, I said sure. I figured it'd be relaxed, casual. He poured me a drink, put some music on low, and started cooking. It all felt fine on the surface, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way he moved around the kitchen. It was precise, like he'd rehearsed it. Even the way he set the plates down, perfectly lined up, fork and knife parallel. I sat there on his couch, trying to relax, but my eyes kept wandering. That's when I noticed it. A tiny red blinking light on the bookshelf across the room. At first, I thought it was just a charger or some kind of router. But the more I looked, the more it felt wrong. The light wasn't steady. It pulsed in a rhythm I recognized, like a recording indicator. I leaned forward, pretending to adjust my drink, and squinted. That's when I saw it. A camera, tucked between books, pointed directly at the couch. My stomach dropped. I tried to play it cool, leaning back like I hadn't noticed, but my hands started sweating. My heart was racing so hard I thought he'd hear it. When he came over with the food, he sat right next to me instead of across the table. He smiled, asked if everything was okay, and I forced a nod. My brain was screaming. That camera wasn't just for him. It was set up like a stream, a live audience. I scanned the room again, my eyes darting without moving my head. Another light, this time near the TV stand, and another near the ceiling corner, barely noticeable. The whole living room was wired. I wanted to run, but the thought of standing up and making it obvious I knew made me freeze. If there was an audience, they were watching me panic right now. I forced myself to eat a little, pretending like I didn't see anything. Every bite tasted like chalk. He kept talking casually about movies, about how hard it was to meet genuine people on apps. He leaned closer, smiling, while those little red lights blinked in the corners. At one point, I excused myself to the bathroom just to get away. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the tub, and pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped it. I thought about calling someone, but what would I even say? That I was on a date and thought I was being streamed. It sounded insane. I opened Instagram out of habit and my stomach flipped. On my Explore page, there was a random live video thumbnail with a familiar background. His apartment. I clicked it and my own face filled the screen. Me, sitting on the couch, smiling nervously. Thousands of people watching. Comments flying up the screen, dissecting everything about me. Some were laughing. Some were asking for me to do things. Some were just disgusting. I nearly threw up. I closed it and sat there in silence, trying to breathe. I had two choices: walk out calmly or make a scene. If I freaked out, who knew how he or the people watching would react? I flushed the toilet to make it seem like I'd actually used it, washed my hands slowly, and forced myself back out. He was still sitting there, smiling like nothing was wrong. I told him I wasn't feeling well, that I should probably head home. His smile faltered for just a second before he nodded. He insisted on walking me out, and every step to the door felt like walking through quicksand. When I finally got outside, the cool air hit me like a wave. I didn't look back. I just walked fast, then broke into a run the second I hit the corner. Later that night, I checked again. The stream was gone. His account had vanished. Every trace of him on the app was wiped, like it had never existed. But I can't stop thinking about the comments. Thousands of strangers saw me sitting on that couch, completely unaware. And I'll never know who they were, where that footage went, or if it's still floating around somewhere. Now, whenever I walk into someone's place, the first thing I do is scan for blinking lights. And every time I see one, even on a smoke detector or a charger, my stomach twists, because I know what it feels like to realize you're not on a date, you're a show. I don't usually notice small inconsistencies on dates. Most of the time, I'm too busy trying not to spill my drink or say something dumb. But with her, I couldn't stop noticing them. They weren't glaring red flags, just little slips, small enough to ignore in the moment, but impossible to forget afterward. We matched after a week of me barely using the app. I'd been half swiping, half wasting time before bed. Her profile stood out because it wasn't overstuffed like most. Just a few photos, natural, not over-edited, and a short bio about books, running, and her love of Thai food. She seemed grounded, refreshingly normal. We started chatting, and she was sharp. Quick replies, funny comebacks, even sent me a picture of the book she was reading, which happened to be the same one I just finished. That detail alone made me feel like it was meant to be. Our conversations weren't forced. They had this easy rhythm, like we were already familiar with each other. So when we agreed to meet at a bar near downtown, I was more excited than nervous. It was casual enough for a first date, but had a quiet corner for real conversation. When I got there, she was already sitting at a table. I recognized her instantly. Same face as the pictures, same style, same smile. Perfect match. At first, we ordered drinks, started talking, and that's when the first slip happened. She introduced herself, but the name she gave wasn't the same one from her profile. It wasn't a shortened version or a nickname. It was completely different. I laughed at first, assuming maybe she had a formal name she didn't like to use online. But when I asked about it, she didn't clarify. She doubled down, said she'd always been called that. It was odd, but I brushed it off. People use different names on dating apps all the time. Safety reasons, privacy, whatever. Then came the job. On her profile, she'd written that she worked in marketing. Something about ad campaigns and late-night brainstorming sessions. But in person, she said she was a nurse. She went into detail about long night shifts and dealing with difficult patients. It wasn't just a mistake, it was a whole different life. I sat there nodding, trying to keep my face neutral while my brain scrambled. The third inconsistency hit like a hammer. Her age. Her profile said 27. Over drinks, she casually mentioned being 23. Not joking, not rounding down, just stating it like fact. 4 years younger than she'd claimed. My phone buzzed in my pocket like a warning bell I couldn't answer. By then, my head was spinning. I excused myself to the bathroom halfway through just to breathe and think. I leaned against the sink, scrolling back through her profile. Same photos, same carefully written details I remembered. There was no mistake. The girl sitting at the table was identical to her pictures, but the life she described, completely different. When I came back, she was sitting exactly as I'd left her, sipping her drink and smiling like nothing was off. That's when I decided to test her. I casually brought up the book she'd shown me in chat, the one we bonded over. "How's it going with that novel?" I asked. She blinked, confused, then laughed lightly and said she wasn't much of a reader, that she hadn't picked up a book in years. My chest tightened. We finished our drinks. I barely tasted mine. When we walked out, she hugged me warmly and said she had a great time. Her smile was bright, convincing, but every hair on my body stood on end. Something was terribly wrong. Later that night, I sat on my couch replaying the evening like a broken record. My stomach twisted every time I thought of her easy smile, her confident lies. I opened the app again, went to her profile. It was still there. Same photos, same details. I sent her a message. "Hey, good to see you tonight." She replied instantly. But the message made no sense. She said she was sorry she couldn't make it out, that she'd gotten stuck at work, that she'd hoped to reschedule. My stomach dropped. I told her we'd already met, that we had drinks at the bar. She wrote back almost immediately, confused, said she had no idea what I was talking about. I stared at the screen, my hands shaking. Either she was gaslighting me or something else. That's when I pulled up the pictures side by side, the girl from the profile and the girl I'd just seen in person. They were identical, same hair, same smile, same eyes, but one was telling me she'd been at work all night. The other had been sitting across from me. Finally, after a stream of tense messages, the truth slipped out. She admitted she had a twin, an identical twin. And apparently, the one I matched with hadn't been the one at the bar. The one I'd met never told me she was a twin, never explained why she pretended to be her sister, never apologized for lying. Just acted like it wasn't a big deal, like borrowing her sister's life for a night was normal. I blocked them both. But the more I think about it, the less I believe it was just a mix-up. Twins or not, she stepped into someone else's skin so easily it scared me. She smiled with someone else's face, wore someone else's details like clothing, and told lies with a kind of ease that only comes from practice. Sometimes, late at night, I think about that moment at the bar, the dim lights, her glass sweating in her hand, her smile identical to the profile photo I'd swiped on. It wasn't just lying. It was impersonation, theft. It was like she'd stolen her sister's identity for the thrill of it. And the worst part, I'll never know if the one I actually matched with was real at all. I used to think making someone a playlist was one of the sweetest things you could do. It feels personal, like every song says something you can't. Growing up, I'd make them for friends, crushes, even myself, little soundtracks to moments in time. And I always thought, if someone ever made me one, it would mean they really saw me. That's why, when he sent me a link with my name as the title, I felt my stomach flip in that good way. We'd only been talking for a couple of weeks on the app, but things felt like they were moving fast in the best way. He wasn't pushy, just attentive. He remembered the name of my dog after I mentioned it once, texted good morning without fail, asked about my day in a way that didn't feel fake. Not how was your day, lol, but how did that meeting go? Or did you finish that book you were reading? So when he said he'd make me something, I was curious. Nervous even, I clicked the link. The playlist was called Songs That Remind Me of You. I opened it late at night, curled up in bed with my headphones. The first song was slow and dreamy, the kind you'd imagine on a long, empty highway under a sky full of stars. The second was louder, upbeat, the type you'd scream along to with your friends, windows down, winding your hair. There were dozens more. Some romantic, some haunting, some so specific I couldn't help but smile. Together, they felt like a story. It was almost too good, like he knew exactly what I'd want to hear. I played it on repeat that whole week, at work while answering emails on the train ride home, drifting off to sleep with one earbud in. Every time it felt like a gift I was unwrapping all over again, like he'd given me a window into how he saw me. On our next date, he asked what I thought of it. I told him I loved it, that it felt different, special. He smiled like he just won something. Then he leaned in and said, almost conspiratorially, each song has a reason. But I won't explain. You'll just know. It sent a shiver through me, but not a bad one. It felt intimate, like he wanted me to puzzle out a secret between us. Weeks passed, and the playlist became part of my life. Certain songs became ours. I hear the opening notes and think about the way he tucked his hair behind his ear, or how his eyes crinkled when he laughed. Sometimes I'd catch myself humming a chorus at work and smile like an idiot. The songs didn't just remind him of me anymore, they reminded me of him. And that's probably why it hurt so much when I found the truth. It happened late one night when I couldn't sleep. I was scrolling through Spotify profiles, public accounts, random playlists. I don't even know why. Boredom, probably. I fell down a rabbit hole of strangers' music collections, clicking one after the other when suddenly I landed on a profile with a picture I recognized. A girl, pretty, smiling with her head tilted in a way I remembered seeing before. It took me a moment. Then I placed her. She was in one of his Instagram posts, buried deep in his tagged photos, his ex. Curiosity got the better of me. Her profile wasn't private. I clicked through her playlists, road trip mixes, workout jams, sleepy acoustic stuff, and then I froze. There it was. A playlist with the exact same title. Songs That Remind Me of You. My chest tightened. No, it couldn't be. I clicked. My hand started shaking as I scrolled. It was identical. Same songs, same order, every track in place like a carbon copy. I sat there staring at it, my ears ringing. He hadn't made it for me. It wasn't mine. It wasn't even new. It was recycled. I scrolled frantically, hoping to find even one difference, some evidence that maybe he'd updated it for me. One song swapped, one addition. Anything. But there was nothing. Down to the tiny, obscure tracks I thought were hand-picked gems meant for me, it was all hers. And then I saw the date. She'd liked it years ago. I slammed my laptop shut like I'd seen something I wasn't supposed to. My throat was dry, my stomach churning. All those nights I'd been lying in bed with those songs in my ears, imagining him thinking of me. He hadn't been. He'd been thinking of her. Always her. The next time I saw him, I couldn't even look at him the same. He smiled, asked about my day, reached for my hand, and all I could picture was him saying those exact same things to her, giving her the same words, the same gestures, the same look. When one of our songs came on in the restaurant, he grinned like it was a sheer joke. My chest tightened so hard I thought I'd choke. He wasn't smiling at me. He was remembering her. I didn't confront him. I didn't want to hear the excuses, the lies, the pathetic explanations about how it's just a playlist, or those songs remind me of both of you. I didn't want to hear her ghost in his voice. So I went home, deleted the playlist from my library, and tried to breathe. But it didn't matter. The songs were already in me. Even now, months later, when one of them plays randomly in the store or on the radio, my stomach knots. I feel hot, dizzy, like I'm back in that moment staring at her profile. The song doesn't remind me of him. It reminds me of how fake it all felt once I knew. And the worst part, sometimes I still listen to it in secret, like scratching at a scab you know you shouldn't touch. Every lyric, every chorus feels like reopening the wound. It doesn't sound like love anymore. It sounds like being a placeholder. It sounds like being haunted. and I'll never hear those songs the same way again. I've got nothing against pets. Cats, dogs, whatever. A few scratches on the couch, a little fur on your clothes. It's normal. So when she told me she had a few cats, I didn't blink. I figured two, maybe three, four if she was really into them. We'd been talking for about 2 weeks. She was funny, quick with comebacks, and had this habit of sending random blurry photos of her coffee or the sky. She seemed real, not one of those overly polished app people. When she invited me over to watch a movie, I thought, why not? She lived close, and I was curious to see what she was like off screen. The first red flag hit the second I walked up to her door. The smell. It wasn't faint either, it was strong, like ammonia and damp carpet. My throat tightened as I knocked. She opened the door, smiling, looking exactly like her pictures. She told me to come in, and I stepped into chaos. Cats. Everywhere. The floor moved. I'm not exaggerating. There were cats weaving between my legs, darting across the hallway, perched on top of shelves. I froze, trying to count, but they blurred together. Black ones, orange ones, gray ones, some tiny and skittish, some huge and scared. The air felt thick, warm, like it had been recycled 1,000 times through fur and litter. I laughed nervously, asked how many she had. She smiled and said a few. I tried to focus on her, but my eyes kept darting. Every surface was alive. The couch was buried in cats, tails flicking, eyes glowing in the dim light. The kitchen counter had food bowls lined up like soldiers. The sound of scratching, meowing, and hissing filled every gap in the conversation. She led me into the living room, clearing a spot on the couch by shooing away 3 cats with her hand. I sat down slowly, trying not to crush one under me. The smell of litter was stronger here, sharp and sour. My eyes watered. She plopped down next to me, grabbed the remote, and acted like this was totally normal. I nodded along, pretending to be calm, but my heart was racing. Halfway through the movie, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. A cat on the bookshelf wasn't moving. It wasn't sleeping either. It was stiff, glassy-eyed, frozen. I stared too long, and she noticed. She laughed and said sometimes they don't make it. Her tone was casual, like she was talking about leftovers spoiling in the fridge. I sat frozen, not sure if I'd heard her right. She reached over, petting another cat like nothing had happened. Around us, the animals kept moving, restless, like the whole room was alive with shifting shadows. The smell got worse the longer I stayed. It was in my hair, my clothes, sinking into my skin. I tried to breathe shallowly, but it burned. My head started throbbing. At one point, she got up to grab snacks, and I couldn't help myself. I peeked down the hallway. The doors to the other rooms were cracked, and I saw more cats. Bedrooms filled with them. A bathroom with litter boxes stacked 3 high, eyes glinting in the dark, watching me. She came back with a bowl of chips, brushing off fur from her sweater, and smiled like everything was fine. She asked if I was having fun. My throat tightened again, and I forced out a yes. But inside, I was panicking, because this wasn't just someone who loved cats. This was something else. Obsession. Hoarding. A whole life swallowed by animals. And I was trapped in the middle of it. I told her I needed water, hoping to catch my breath in the kitchen. I grabbed a glass, filled it from the tap, and saw the sink piled with dirty bowls. Some still had clumps of food stuck to them, swarming with flies. I put the glass down, suddenly not thirsty anymore. When I walked back to the couch, she was staring at me. Not angry, not upset, just staring, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Cats crawled around her, settling into her lap and shoulders like she was part of the furniture. I sat back down slowly, my skin crawling. I wanted to leave, but I didn't know how to do it without making it obvious. The movie ended and she leaned closer, thanking me for coming over. A cat jumped onto my lap, its claws digging into my jeans. I winced, gently pushing it off, and stood up, forcing a smile. I told her I had to work early in the morning. She looked disappointed but nodded. I walked quickly to the door, careful not to step on tails. The smell followed me like a cloud. Outside, the air felt sharp and clean. I gulped it down like I'd been underwater too long. My clothes reeked, My skin felt sticky, and my hands itched with invisible scratches. Later that night, I couldn't stop replaying it. The stiff cat on the shelf. The casual way she said, "Sometimes they don't make it." The sheer number of eyes glowing in the dark rooms. She'd said she had a few cats. She didn't. She had 43. And now, every time I hear a meow in the distance, I think of the house, alive with fur and shadows, and I feel my stomach turn. The date didn't feel dangerous at first. That's the part I keep circling back to in my head. If anything, it felt boringly normal. Two people who met on a dating app, ate dinner at a quiet place, and then decided to have a drink back at his apartment. There were no obvious red flags, no weird vibes, nothing that would have told me to run. He was polite, maybe even a little shy. Average height, average looks, average conversation. The kind of man who blends into a crowd so seamlessly you forget him 2 minutes later. And maybe that's why I said yes. People like that don't scare you. People like that feel safe. His apartment looked fine too. Too fine. Neutral colored couch, perfectly folded blanket, not a single thing out of place. Everything about it felt staged, like it had been decorated from a catalog rather than lived in. Even the smell was neutral. No food, no candles, no human scent at all. Just blank. I told myself he was just tidy. Some people are. I'm rather tidy than messy, right? We sat down, low music playing from a speaker, small talk flowing in that slightly awkward way first date conversations do. He poured me a glass of wine and I sipped slowly, one eye on my drink like I always do, the other trying to read his body language. Nothing. Just calm. Average. At some point, I excused myself to the bathroom. He pointed me down the hallway to the second door on the right. His directions were clear, almost rehearsed. I walked in, shut the door, and that's when everything shifted. The bathroom looked normal enough. White tiles, a mirror above the sink, neatly folded towels hanging on a bar. No toothpaste smears, no stray hair in the sink. Perfect. Too perfect. I washed my hands, glanced at my phone, just checking texts, and reached for the doorknob to go back. It didn't turn. I frowned, tried again, twisting harder. Nothing. The knob wouldn't budge. My chest tightened. I pulled harder, jiggled it, shoved my shoulder into the door. Still nothing. It wasn't just locked. It was jammed, or built not to open from the inside. A cold ripple ran down my spine. I tried again, more frantic this time. Same result. The knob turned loosely but never clicked open, like a toy knob on a fake door. I froze, my palm still on the cool metal. My heart was hammering so loud it felt like it echoed off the tile. I leaned against the door listening. The music from the living room was faint down the hall, but I couldn't hear him moving. Just silence. I knocked lightly. Waited. Knocked harder. Nothing. I pulled out my phone, but of course, there was no service. Just a dead zone inside these walls. My palms were slick with sweat now, my whole body on edge. I crouched down, inspecting the door frame. That's when I saw it. Thin metal lining all around the edge. Not wood. Not paint. Reinforced. My stomach dropped. I backed away, staring at the four walls around me. The mirror stared back, my own pale reflection wide-eyed and shaking. Why would someone need a bathroom door reinforced? Why would it be impossible to open from the inside? I banged again, harder this time, my knuckles throbbing. Still nothing. Then faintly, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Slow, deliberate. They stopped right outside the door. I pressed myself against the opposite wall, my breath caught in my throat. Silence. Then the footsteps moved away, fading back toward the living room. I sank to the floor, panic clawing at my chest. I didn't know what to do. Scream. Wait. Break the mirror and use the glass as a weapon. My mind was all over the place. Minutes dragged by like hours. My ears strained for any sound. His footsteps, the music, the click of a lock. Nothing. Finally, his voice came casual, muffled through the door. You okay in there? My voice cracked. The door won't open. He laughed softly. Yeah, sometimes it sticks. Give me a minute. I pressed my ear to the door. I heard it then clicks. Not one, but several. Metal against metal. Like he was undoing more than just a simple lock. After a long pause, the knob turned smoothly from the outside. The door swung open. He stood there smiling, holding his glass of wine like nothing was wrong. Told you it sticks, he said lightly. Come on out. I forced a smile, my whole body trembling. Thanks, I managed to say. Thanks, like I hadn't just been trapped in a room that wasn't supposed to open. I walked past him, every muscle in my body screaming at me to keep moving. My bag was on the couch. I grabbed it, mumbling something about an early morning. He nodded, still smiling. Didn't try to stop me. Didn't seem surprised at all. He even walked me to the door, polite as ever. The second I was outside, I walked fast down the hall, down the stairs, into the street. My hands shook as I called a rideshare. I didn't look back until I was inside the car, and even then, the windows of his apartment were dark. Later, when I replayed it in my head, the details screamed at me. The reinforced door, the way the knob didn't even turn like a normal lock, the silence when I first knocked, and worst of all, the sound of those metal clicks when he finally let me out. That wasn't an accident. That door wasn't stuck. It was built that way. Now, every time I use a bathroom in someone else's place, I check the door 3 times before I shut it. Sometimes I even wedge my shoe in the frame, because I know what it feels like to be on the wrong side of one that isn't meant to open. And I can still hear the sound of those footsteps outside the door, waiting. I used to think third dates were supposed to be easy. That's the point where you're past the awkward introductions, where the small talk fades and you can actually relax. With her, it was the opposite. The third date is the night everything flipped, and even now, months later, I still replay it in my head, trying to understand what actually happened. We met the same way everybody meets now on a dating app. She wasn't flashy. No overly filtered photos or travel shots meant to impress. Just a couple of selfies and one picture of her sitting on the edge of a park fountain, smiling at whoever had taken it. Her bio was short, almost boring. A few hobbies, a job in communications, and a joke about loving pineapple on pizza. Nothing that stood out. Nothing that screamed trouble. But she messaged me first. That's rare. She said something funny about my profile picture, and we started talking. The conversation was easy, light, nothing weird. No oversharing, no passive-aggressive digs, no obvious red flags. The first date was coffee. She showed up early, looked like her pictures laughed at my jokes. She wasn't glued to her phone. She asked questions. It was pleasant. Not electric, but pleasant. The second date was dinner. Same thing. She listened, she smiled. She told me a story about her cat. She wasn't clingy, but she wasn't cold either. She was normal. By the third date, I was thinking maybe I'd actually keep seeing her. We met at a quiet bar with dim lighting and wooden booths in the back. It smelled faintly of beer and lemon oil, like every bar of its kind. She waved when I walked in, her hair tucked behind one ear. I sat across from her, ordered a drink, and everything felt familiar. At first, it was fine. We talked about work, about TV shows, about weekend plans. She teased me about my terrible taste in movies. I laughed. I felt my shoulders relax. Then her tone shifted. She leaned forward, both elbows on the table, and looked me dead in the eye. Her pupils seemed huge in the dim light. I need to tell you something serious, she said. I braced myself. Maybe she had a boyfriend. Maybe she was moving out of town. Maybe she had a health issue. All the normal serious possibilities zipped through my head in a split second. But no, she said she was pregnant. I just sat there, blinking at her. My first reaction was confusion. Pregnant? With what? With who? We hadn't even hooked up. Not once. I laughed nervously, waiting for her to crack a smile, but she didn't. She was stone serious. Her voice was soft, but unwavering. She said she knew it was mine. That's when the bottom dropped out of my stomach. I tried to process it logically. We'd only known each other a few weeks. We hadn't slept together. There was no possible way. But she said it so firmly, like it was a fact carved into stone, that for a second I doubted my own memory. "I think you're mistaken," I said carefully. "We've never." She shook her head. "You don't understand yet," she said, her eyes unblinking. "You'll come around." My hands went clammy. I glanced around the bar, half wondering if anyone could hear us. Everyone else was laughing, drinking, living normal lives, while my date sat across from me claiming I'd gotten her pregnant without touching her. She started talking about names, about whether I'd want a boy or a girl, about how she'd decorate the nursery. My throat went dry. I excused myself to the bathroom just to breathe. In the mirror, my face looked pale, almost sick. I splashed water on it, trying to ground myself, trying to make sense of what she just said. When I came back, she was still there calmly sipping her drink like she hadn't just dropped the most insane bomb on me. The rest of the night was a blur. I barely heard her words. She kept talking about the future, about being a family, about how lucky we were to have found each other so quickly. She spoke as if it were already decided, as if my agreement was a minor detail she'd handle later. I nodded and smiled weakly, all while my chest felt like it was caving in. When I walked her out, she hugged me tight, pressing her head into my chest. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I'm glad you're handling this so well," she murmured. I stood frozen, letting her go, forcing myself to act normal until she disappeared around the corner. The second she was gone, I blocked her number, blocked her on the app, blocked her on everything. I told myself that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning, I woke up to an email. A long one. She found my work address. She said she understood I was in shock, but that she was patient. She said she knew deep down I cared about her and the baby. The word baby burned into my brain. Over the next week, the messages kept coming. Sometimes long paragraphs about her day, sometimes short ones like, "The baby kicked today," or "Thinking about you." I never replied. The silence didn't stop her. It made her worse. Then one night, I got a friend request on Facebook from an account with her name, but the profile picture wasn't her. It was an ultrasound. My stomach dropped. I deleted it immediately, but I couldn't shake the image. An ultrasound. I didn't know if it was hers, if it was stolen from someone else, if it was even real. I just knew she wanted me to see it. The emails turned darker after that. She said she was disappointed in me, that I was abandoning my family, that she'd tell everyone what I did, that she'd show up at my apartment if I didn't respond. My hands shook every time I opened my inbox, afraid of what I'd read next. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. No more emails. No more fake accounts. Nothing. It's been months. I haven't heard from her again. But sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night thinking about her calm smile across the table, the way she said, "You'll come around," like it was inevitable. I know it wasn't true. I know it was impossible. But the way she said it, the way she looked at me, made me feel like I'd stepped into a story I couldn't control, like I'd been cast in a role I never agreed to play. And every time I pass that bar now, I feel my stomach knot, like I'm going to look inside and see her waiting, smiling, telling me again that I'm already a father. I didn't expect much from him. His profile was basic. 3 selfies in bad lighting, one photo with a golden retriever, and a generic caption about loving to travel. I'd swiped right more out of boredom than actual interest. He messaged me within minutes of the match. The conversation wasn't groundbreaking. His questions came fast, one after another, like he was trying to run through a checklist. What's your favorite color? Do you want kids? Do you believe in fate? It felt a little intense, but he wasn't rude or gross. Just eager. Our first date was coffee, neutral territory. He arrived before me, standing as soon as I walked in. He held the door, pulled out the chair, even stood awkwardly until I sat. Too polite, almost stiff, but better than the alternative. He stared a lot, not the usual kind of date staring, more like he was memorizing me. Every laugh, every sip of my drink. Still, he was pleasant. He listened, laughed at my stories, leaned in when I talked. I walked away thinking, not amazing, but maybe worth a second chance. So when he asked to see me again that weekend, I said yes. That second date is burned into my brain. The restaurant was a little Italian place, candlelit tables, low music. He was already there when I arrived, sitting with his back straight and this enormous grin, like my showing up was the highlight of his year. "Hey," I said, sliding into the seat across from him. "You look beautiful," he said immediately, almost rehearsed. I ordered a drink, trying to relax, but before the appetizers even came, he leaned forward and dropped it on me. He said he'd already told his family about me. I laughed automatically, waiting for the punchline, but his face didn't shift. He was dead serious. He said his mom couldn't wait to meet me, that his sister was so excited he'd finally found someone. My stomach twisted. Date 2. We'd met once before for coffee. I didn't even know his middle name. Now apparently his mom already knew mine. "That's fast," I said carefully, forcing a smile. He just nodded enthusiastically like I'd agreed. Then he added that he'd already changed his Facebook status to "in a relationship." My phone buzzed in my bag. When I checked later, I had notifications. People tagging me, commenting congratulations. My chest tightened. I hadn't agreed to anything. I hadn't even kissed him yet. Then he told me about the ring. Not bought, not yet. But he'd gone to a jeweler, looked at styles, and even showed them my picture. He said he wanted them to understand my vibe. My fork froze halfway to my mouth. This wasn't flattery. This wasn't sweet. It was obsession, crammed into a timeline that made no sense. He kept going, his voice calm, happy like it was totally normal. He talked about wedding colors, about where we'd live, about how many kids we'd have. His words blurred together, my brain buzzing louder than his voice. I couldn't taste my food. I couldn't feel my legs under the table. I nodded weakly, trying not to let my panic show. Halfway through, I excused myself to the bathroom. Inside, I locked the door and texted my friend with shaking hands. "Call me in 10 minutes. Make it sound urgent." I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection. My cheeks were pale, my eyes wide. How had I missed this? He hadn't seemed this intense the first time. Or maybe I just hadn't seen it yet. When I came back, he was scrolling on his phone, smiling. I caught a glimpse of the screen as I slid into my seat. He was sending my picture to a family group chat. My stomach dropped so fast I felt dizzy. I forced myself to sit there, my phone gripped tight in my hand. And then, right on schedule, my fake emergency call came through. My friend's voice was loud, urgent, believable. I grabbed onto it like a lifeline. "I have to go," I told him. His face fell, but he didn't argue. Instead, he hugged me. Too tightly. His chin pressed into my shoulder for a beat too long. "I'll see you soon," he whispered. I slipped out of his arms, muttered something about calling later, and bolted. The second I got home, I blocked him. His number, the app, even Facebook. I told myself that was it. That was the end. It wasn't. 2 days later, a package showed up at my door. No return address. Inside was a stuffed animal, a little bear holding a fake plastic ring tied around its paw with a ribbon. My hands shook as I pulled it from the box. My stomach knotted so hard it hurt. I dropped it straight into the trash. Then I locked every door and window, sat in silence, and listened for footsteps in the hallway. The next morning, I called my building manager and begged them to check the security cameras. They said the package had been dropped off by regular delivery. No way to trace who sent it. I wanted to believe it was a coincidence that maybe he hadn't been the one behind it. But I knew. I knew. I never replied. I never reached out. I just went quiet. And then nothing. No more packages. No new accounts. No sudden appearances outside my building. Just silence. It's been months now. But the image of him across the table, smiling, talking about a future I never agreed to, still makes my chest tighten. Because I know for him, in his head, that future was already real. And somewhere out there, there's a family chat thread with my photo in it, tucked between messages about wedding plans and baby names. I don't know if he deleted it. I don't know if he ever really let me go. Ghosting is normal. That's what I told myself. Not every date clicks. Not every conversation has to be dragged out until it dies on its own. Sometimes you just let it fade, and that's what I did with her. We'd gone for a quick drink. Nothing terrible, nothing explosive, just no spark. She was quiet, her eyes darted a lot, and the pauses stretched too long. I didn't feel it, so I stopped texting back. No dramatic goodbye, just silence. A week later, I got the first text. It came from an unknown number. No greeting, no name. Just blue hoodie, black jeans. Looks good. I glanced down at myself. That's exactly what I was wearing. My stomach tightened. I checked my contacts, thinking maybe it was a friend messing with me, but the number didn't match anyone I knew. I texted back asking who it was. No reply. The next day, another message. Green shirt today, clean cut. I froze at my desk. I was wearing a green button-up. I hadn't posted a picture. Nobody at work would bother texting me like that. The third day, it escalated. You should smile more when you grab coffee in the morning. That's when I knew someone was close. Not guessing, not just scrolling my socials, watching. I stopped going to the cafe near my apartment. I started looking over my shoulder when I left the house. But the texts kept coming. Every day, every outfit, every small habit. Gray hoodie, headphones in, pretending you don't notice people. White t-shirt, late to the train, tie your shoes tighter. Black jacket, hands in pockets, walking fast like you're scared. I didn't tell anyone at first. I thought it would stop if I ignored it. But it didn't. The silence on my end seemed to make it worse. The descriptions got more specific. One night, I was cooking in my kitchen with the blinds cracked. My phone buzzed. The way you stir pasta is funny, clockwise every time. My hands froze on the spoon. My blinds faced the street. Someone was outside. I dropped everything and yanked them shut, my heart pounding. That's when I realized it had to be her, the girl I ghosted. Nobody else fit. Nobody else had a reason. I pulled up her profile on the app. It was gone. Deleted. The text didn't stop. Gray sweatpants. Sitting on the couch. Don't slouch. Black hoodie, checking your phone, wondering if it's me. Red shirt. You look better in darker colors. Every message felt like a knife under my skin. I stopped wearing colors I liked. I started rotating the same outfits, trying to throw her off. But it didn't matter. She always got it right. I started scanning faces on my block. Every stranger on the train. Every reflection in the windows. I deleted my public profiles. I changed my routes. None of it worked. The breaking point came on a Sunday. I was alone in my apartment watching TV. My phone buzzed. You shouldn't leave your door unlocked. I bolted upright. My stomach dropped. I ran to the door. It was locked. Deadbolt and chain. I checked twice. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped my keys. I texted back for the first time in weeks. Who are you? The reply came instantly. You know who I am. I blocked the number, but a new one appeared the next day. And the next. Different numbers, same voice behind them. I couldn't outrun it. I started sleeping with the lights on. Every creak of the building made me jump. Every shadow outside my window felt like her. One night, I thought I heard something at my door, a soft scrape like nails on wood. I froze in the dark, holding my breath. No knock, no footsteps, just silence. I installed a camera by the door. Nothing showed up, not once. The texts kept coming. Blue hoodie again, my favorite. The way you hold your phone when you're nervous is cute. You don't look over your shoulder enough. It was like she knew when I'd stopped checking, when I'd started laying my guard down, and she used those moments to slip back in. And then silence. No more messages, no unknown numbers, no phantom buzz at midnight. Just a week of quiet. You'd think I'd feel relief, but I didn't. I felt worse, because silence meant she could be anywhere, doing anything, waiting for something. I started noticing other things instead. A faint smell of perfume in my building's stairwell. My mail shifted in the box. My doormat slightly crooked when I came home. Tiny, insignificant things that could have been nothing. But I never noticed them until the text stopped. It's been months now. No new messages. No packages. No random numbers. But every morning when I pick out my clothes, I feel watched. I hear the phantom buzz of a phone that isn't vibrating. Sometimes I catch myself in the mirror checking my reflection before I leave the house, and I wonder if somewhere she's still out there describing it. Maybe she's still watching. Maybe she's just waiting for me to smile.